I'm really delighted to have three people next to me who I truly consider to be industry leaders in their respective domains. And before we jump into what I know will be a very interesting exchange because of these three people, not because of me, I would like to introduce them a little more extensively. So in no particular order, I'll start with Heather in the middle. Heather Trombley is the president of DentalEZ. Heather has had I think I can say that, very distinguished career for many years at General Electric, rising through the ranks to become the general manager of one of their medical supplies businesses, and then became the VP of Strategy, Marketing, and Education at ConMed Corporation, which is a leader in sports medicine and orthopedics, if I remember correctly. And she's currently the president of DentalEZ, which is a leading manufacturer of dental operatory equipment. And I promise you, I will come back to that concept, which I knew very little about myself. So please welcome Heather, first of all. Then second, to my immediate right, we have Mario Cruz, who we have known, and he has known us since a very long time. Mario has been responsible for product design and innovation in a variety of technology director and CTO roles over time, including the Rewards Network and Vigil, before ending up at Watsco Ventures, which is the innovation and venture arm of Watsco. And you'll forgive me for saying this, Mario, but Watsco for me is one of those almost hidden champions. It's a Fortune 2000 company that many of us, before starting to work with Mario, had barely heard about. They're the leading distributor of HVAC systems in the US with an annual turnover of $4 billion, a very impressive forward-thinking company, and Mario leads their innovation charge as their CTO. So welcome, Mario. And then last but not least, at my far right, Nguyen Lee is president and CFO of Shifted Energy. But before he landed in startup land, Nguyen has a background in investment banking and private equity, and then made the change to the telecommunications community, where he led the rollout of fiber optic networks for Global Crossing in Europe. Spent some good time in Amsterdam and Paris as a result, if I'm not mistaken. And then somehow, through various sailing adventures, ended up in Hawaii, where he's helped a number of startup businesses commercialize and grow, and ended up being the president and CFO of Shifted Energy, which is one of the companies who you might recall Zach introduced a little while ago. So thank you for joining us as well, Nguyen. All right, very good. So maybe one way to kick things off, as you might have seen in Zach and Will's presentation, Particle tends to deploy its products across a very wide variety of use cases and businesses. And even though we can get very enthusiastic about brand new product ideas, I'm personally more fascinated when we see new techniques and new innovation being deployed on technologies, on products that have been around for a longer time. And I find it interesting looking at our panel here between water heaters and dental compressors and HVAC systems. Those are products that have been in operation since decades, right? If not longer. And maybe, Heather, if I can start with you, for a company like DentalEZ that has such a distinguished record over many decades in manufacturing this equipment, how do you even, when you started as president a couple of years ago, how do you even start thinking about introducing innovation into your company and into your portfolio?
Well, thank you, Kenneth. So I did join DentalEZ about 4 years ago, and it has a long reputation and legacy in the dental market space, particularly in capital products that are used in the practice of dentistry. It's a very mature market, and I did face the challenge of how do you take commoditized products and bring innovation to the forefront. I kind of tripped on IoT, frankly, through my research and through some of the work I had done previous in the introduction that Kenneth talked about in med device. And I recognized that and I'm going to use some colloquialism in the dental market, that a good place to start might be in the heart and the lungs of the dental office. So if you don't know this, a dental office can only run if you have a compressor delivering air to all the instruments and vacuum that retrieves all the, frankly, gunk that happens at the operatory site. And those products are very classically designed. They are classic vacuums and compressors. But at the end of the day, what dentists really want is they want the service provided from the air or the retraction of the air. And so we started thinking about our model and instead of selling capital devices that last 7 to 10 to 15 years, how can we think of the service that we're providing to dentists? And as Zach illustrated in his opening remarks about our market, downtime is very costly. So innovation for us didn't necessarily mean potentially 2 or 3 extra points of efficiency on a compressor. For us, it meant, can we innovate on reduction of downtime? Can we create services and technology that provide uptime for a dentist that really truly derives value? And hence, here we are with Particle, looking at IoT as a strategy, not just for those devices, but other devices, redefining what innovation can mean in the dental office.
Okay, that's great. And if I actually take compressors as a cross-link,
That's pretty close to...
was that seamless enough as a transition, Mario?
Very seamless. I think we had the same sort of thought, right? These are systems that have been around forever, and how can we provide more value for the customer and then our customer, the contractor, right? So how can he be more aware? How can he sort of smooth out his season? And a lot of the same sort of problems that she talked about is what we wanted to do is how do we create a better opportunity for our customers to add value to their customers. And we thought this is one of the easiest way to add value and to continue to grow that value chain as time goes by, right? It's you can't chew all of it at once. You have to just start small and then continue to add value in that chain.
Would you mind telling us a little bit, for context, Mario, about Watsco Ventures? Because I have to say, when I learned that a company like Watsco actually had a dedicated ventures arm, and when you walk into your offices in Coconut Grove, you know, you don't necessarily expect an HVAC distributor to have rows and rows of beautiful flat screen monitors and people writing code. So give us a little bit more background about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think innovation at Watsco comes from everywhere. I think we don't have an innovation department. I just get to build things in a walled place where nobody bothered me for a while, right? So innovation comes from our customers. Innovation comes from the field and from what we see in the future. So what we do is basically take all those things and see, part of our culture at Watsco is we want to think, long term, right? And all our management really is sort of built to look at that long-term goal. So whatever we do has to work today, but it has to work for the future. So we look at innovation in ways we can deliver things now and continue to add value over time. That's how the company has been built over the many years it's been around, and that's how they've delivered value to the customers. So
Right.
we thought, what can we do to help our customers? And all the things we do today is how to make our customer better, how to make them more effective and efficient. Because if they're efficient, they're buying more from us, right? It's a very symbiotic relationship. We want them to be better. We want them to be more efficient. We want them to continue to grow their market space because that helps Watsco in turn.
Mm-hmm. And interestingly, as is the case with Heather and DentalEZ, you deal with customers sometimes directly, but you also have distributors and resellers and maintenance contractors in between. And that's actually your primary customer base, isn't it?
My primary customer is the contractor, right? And so the products we're creating is products for them to sell to the homeowner. And we're going to hopefully take away all the hard parts from that and make it very easy for them to deploy, right? So it's a very old industry, same problem. It's an old industry that has done it this way forever. And we're saying, here's a way to start changing that business, right? The service business is becoming the norm for everybody. The SaaS business is the norm for everybody. Rental models are becoming the norm for everybody. How do we get them started today so that they can deploy these different models in the future themselves, right? It's just creating tools for them to deploy. We do that with e-com, we do that with our mobile apps, we do that now with IoT. And it's all one big umbrella for us. That's really the goal of the Watsco solution.
And I'll obviously want to come back to IoT, but given that you mentioned old industries, perfect segue to Nguyen, arguably one of the oldest industries. I think the electrical grid has been called the biggest machine in America, right? And one of the oldest. And so you're looking to, dare I say, disrupt one of those oldest industries as well. And I wonder that can't always be an easy story. So how do you engage with your customers to speak to innovation?
Well, it was really market driven. But the company, Shifted Energy, is a classic startup company. And its mission was social justice. And just looking at the energy industry, you saw that, between electric cars, solar panels, et cetera, all renewable technologies were going towards the wealthy homeowners. And Shifted Energy wanted to turn it back towards, renters, lower income. How can you engage that population? And so we looked at a lot of devices, and it turns out you can't really turn on and off HVAC because people get uncomfortable. But water heaters is the best thermal storage, energy storage. So we actually started as a software company and relied upon hardware vendors. But what we found is that the hardware vendors for GIWH, which has grid interactive water heaters, has been around for 20 years with pilot programs, et cetera, but with very low-tech solutions that you can just basically turn on and off the water heaters at a set time every day and just forget about it. But then over the last 10 years, these grid-enabled interactive water heaters that had intelligence, they came on board, but the hardware manufacturers that were out there relied upon Ethernet and other terrible communication methods. So we ran a pilot in Hawaii that was about $1 million, 500 units, and it just proved that those other technologies didn't work. And we had to go from a software company to developing our own hardware to make it work. And because those pilots didn't work out and the utility wasn't happy with the results, so we had to create one. And now that we have that solution with Particle, now other utilities are jumping on board.
Okay. And there's certainly been a process of trial and error, right,
Yeah.
and of iteration, and I know that this has been the case for you as well, Mario. So as we get a little bit deeper into the guts of what IoT product development means, can you speak a little bit to that? I know for a fact you've done a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, I think, I'm mostly a software guy, right? So I've done hardware many, many moons ago. I started doing hardware again a couple years ago, 5 years ago. But with software, you have quick changes. You have quick, the prototype to iteration is quicker. With hardware, that isn't as quick. So you have to sort of plan for that in your process. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the early trials and errors is, and why I chose Particle is because I wanted to just concentrate on things that I could make a difference, right? On the parts where it's a sensor data and the parts are getting to machine learning and getting all the backend stuff. Those are the stuff I wanted to work on. So you have to figure out what you want to be good at. And for us, the hardware device was just like, again, as I said, a means to capture the data, right? And be able to do something with that data and then have an action on that data, right? So I think the iteration of that piece is the software is always ahead of the hardware. So basically, Zach had a lot of what I would say earlier today. You have to plan to try to capture as much as you can because the extraction of data, you're not sure where it's going to come from, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing that's going to be the thing that clicks is not the thing you might know what it is. And so for us, the iteration was like, what does an HVAC technician do when he shows up to a site? We said, we'll take the analog and try to make it digital. So right. You create an IoT device that basically mimics what an HVAC contractor does when he shows up at your house. He just puts on some gauges, puts on some pressure probes, puts on some temperature probes, and does a whole bunch of math calculations inside a piece of paper. So we said, if we just made that digital for them, that's the first step. So that's where we started, which was let's just make that digital. The second part was, now can we send that home? And the third part is, can we add machine learning to that? And the fourth part is, now can we manage a fleet of this? And then the fifth part is, what new business models does that bring, right? So those are stacks that we're working on, but we start off with the very first one, can we emulate what's done today in analog back to physical, right? Like Heather said, somebody probably had to go to those sites once a month and look at those compressors, and that's in the HVAC business, that's like $200 a truck roll, right? And he's done no work, just to show up. Right. So we can cut that out of the part. We've done nothing but just made that scalable, but we really haven't changed the process, right? And then you start changing the process. Those are the things that iteration sort of brings you, which is you can't chew it all at once. Just figure out the first part and then keep adding those slices. Because the hardware, once you said, oh, we want to add this, I need a new sensor. That's how you build, how you spin, and then that's the process.
And you spoke a bit about skill sets and where you chose to focus. Have there been unexpected obstacles in creating these connected products where, you say in hindsight, maybe I should have seen that coming, or it was really totally unexpected, a problem that, you wouldn't foresee?
That's a layup. I think we created our own board originally, right? And so we spun up our own board, and 9 months later, I was like, I really don't care about OTA, I don't care about security. I need to get to the machine learning, I need to get to the part that's going to make me money. So literally, I bought a particle off the shelf.
So you gave your nasty problems to us, right?
Yeah, and I said, I rather complain to my, the sales and the tech guys at Particle and worry about what's important to Watsco.
Right.
For us, that's a piece of hardware, right? And it's a device that's important to us. Security is important to us. OTA is important to us, but it's not what I can focus on. I want to focus on the machine learning. I want to focus on the business models. I want to focus on delivering value to our customers, right? And so you deliver our value to me, and I just pass that on. It's a part of the value chain, part of the sales supply chain. It's just like another vendor there.
Right. And maybe a similar question for you then, Heather, because remembering visiting your assembly facility in Alabama and being really impressed by the mechanical engineering chops, right, that your team has there. Electronics is not their wheelhouse, and I know this has been part of your decision-making as well, correct?
Yes, so slightly different experience than Mario. We actually didn't attempt any trial and error. We knew what our core competencies were. Our company has been around in various iterations for about 100 years, and we make devices, and particularly mechanical devices, hydraulic systems, and electronics and software is not in our wheelhouse. So rather than experiment and take a lot of time where we didn't have core competencies, we canvassed the landscape, and we chose Particle really because of its end-to-end offering. I mean, for a fact, hardware design in combination with our mechanical and electrical engineers, the software and all the elements of connectivity is why we went to Particle. We are actually focused on the device, the business model, and the market insight, and we're letting Particle worry about the nasty issues on the connectivity spread, so that when we do go to market, we are not live yet. When we go to market, we believe we'll have a very well thought through solution, leveraging their expertise along with our expertise. And that's the partnership that has made this what we hope to be very successful.
And if you cast your mind back to, what was it, July, August last year, when you made the decision to go forward with this project, can you cast your mind back? What was it really in the end that made you say, let's connect our portfolio? What were you hoping to achieve?
Well, I think Zach painted the picture very well. He described solving today's problems today. I certainly have a vision for where the company's going to go in the long term, but there are real problems today. These devices do operate in nasty corners and basements of dental offices, and they're not easily accessible, and those who are in the office don't know how to operate them or what they mean anyway. So we really decided to approach this on when there is a break fix, when there is an event and a compressor goes down, a head blows, whatever the situation is. Let's sensor it up, know that event, and then transmit the data so that we can have a very quick service event. And that downtime will translate into dollars for the dentist. But you can see, as has been laid out this morning, that that's just the tip of the iceberg. And so we expect to be able to do much more value-added services down the road. But to your point, what made us pull the trigger is there's an immediate benefit to solve today's problem in the break fix and the more efficient maintenance routine that can happen as a result of being a connected device.
Maybe then on a similar note, when coming to you, could you also make that distinction for us between today and tomorrow? You know, what are you trying to achieve with your customers today, and what do you think you can get out of this IoT connected solution tomorrow?
Well, our customers are utilities, and they look, years and decades ahead. But even getting in the door at utilities, you have to respond to the RFI, into a pilot program, demonstration program, small commercial, large commercial. And at each stage of that, you need an awful lot of support, and it's tremendous due diligence. So one of the things when we responded to these utilities RFIs, if it weren't for particle certifications, the cellular certifications, the product certifications, we couldn't get into the door. So our expertise is in the machine learning, and we could rely upon Particle for the complete communications layer. So right now we have probably over a dozen successful pilots, and we just launched a commercial program in Hawaii that was approved by the PUC. So that's going to be 2,400 units just for the first couple of years. With with our partner in Canada, they have said they want potentially 80,000 units a year. So we have to just start small, prove our capabilities to the nth degree. And so It is an iteration process, and that's why the particle presentation today is so critical for us. I mean, in Canada right now, we're deploying 3G. It looks like we're going to have to move to LTE really soon, but our current 5-year scope is just 3G. And if you have 10,000 units deployed of 3G and it gets sunsetted, you're in an awful lot of trouble. So we have to work through all those issues with not only particle, but with our utility customer. And we have to think about decades in advance.
That is actually a fascinating challenge that I would say the three of you have in common, right? Because I look at the average lifetime of the products that you're responsible for. Doing some quick math here, it's probably 8-9 years on average between the three of you. So just generally, maybe coming back to you, Mario, how do you, in terms of technology implementation, what are some of the factors that you consider as a result? You know, specifically as it relates to IoT or in general, given the lifetime, the expected lifetime of the product?
Well, our goal here is to facet on that question. For some of our customers, they want to extend that life 8 to 10 years, right? So how can we add 3 or 4 more years if we had the proper maintenance, proper support, and proper information on that system? And then there's the other guys that just says, I want to put on that system, so when it breaks, I can sell a new one, right?
Right.
So there's 2 types of models there, so that where he might show up to a house and say, hey, this is pretty old equipment, right? I can do a health report and maybe show this customer that let's wait for a planned replacement in the middle of when it's not really cold or not really hot. You can now plan for replacement where it's on the hottest day of the year, your air conditioner breaks, it's hard to get an HVAC guy out to your house in a timely manner. They have more work than they can. But if you have all this history and data and you can say, hey, it's kind of sick, and so why don't we plan for this in 6 months, or let's plan to put this on the map where there's time and place. So those are sort of the 2 things that are important to our hardware. And then again, if that system is replaced, our goal is hopefully that it gets reinstalled in that new system, and now has a new data-driven. And if there's a new version of the hardware, maybe there's an upgrade at that point in time that has maybe more capabilities and more information.
Right, and maybe I'm stretching the analogy a little bit, going back to what Zach and Will have said, but in terms of the problem here today, diagnosing a sick machine and suggesting a replacement, capturing that replacement opportunity is something you can do today.
Correct.
Now, I'm not quite cynical when it comes to predictive maintenance, but I think both you and I would agree that there's a lot of hype when it comes to predictive maintenance. What are some, I know you're working on some really cool stuff you probably don't want to disclose publicly, but can you just give us a little hint of some of the forms of predictive
I think
behavior?
And this is in every industry. This is going to be in healthcare. This is going to be everything we do. The machine is the machine, and there's a human involved. So our goal is to suggest these are the things we're seeing, right? And here's the data to show that, and show a human that, right? And then when you show a homeowner, it's different from when you show an HVAC technician, which is different when you show somebody at the hospital, right? You know, a radio tech is going to look at that and say, hey, this is what the AI says or machine learning says, but here's my real read on this. So we think it's a 2-step process. Our goal is never to replace a human, right? Our goal is to say, here's the problems we're seeing, and do you agree? I mean, maybe, I will tell you the HVAC systems, and I know I'm in about this business, but the installation has a lot to do with the life of that system, or how good it is, or how efficient it is. So if an HVAC technician takes over a company or a restaurant that has 3 air conditioners that are installed poorly, they're going to have alarms every day, but he's got to live with that because it was installed poorly from the beginning. So he has to understand that I'm going to tell you these problems, but the goal for them in the future is to be able to understand and be able to have actions on those. And the action might be we do nothing until it breaks because we can't do anything about it. These are expensive systems, and they were installed poorly or improperly from the get-go. So the goal here is to have that 2 pieces of data, which is what the machine says is wrong, and then show the human exactly the data in nice graphs or in the math they're used to, and say, do you agree, right? And then have an action on that. And maybe that action is, this will work for another 6 months or 9 months, and that's okay. It's like a check engine light, right? I have a problem. How critical is that problem? Can I postpone my buying a car till the end of the year? Or I can buy an old model or something. That's sort of the analogy.
Right. So Heather, when Mario said the lifetime of the device is directly correlated to the quality of the installation, if I paraphrase, you were nodding vigorously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that applies to your world as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The ventilation, the air, the quality of the room, and the circulation matters for these devices. And to piggyback a little bit on what Mario was saying, and Kenneth's question around predictive being a little bit overhyped, clearly that's where we want to go. But I want to share a little bit of a precursor example of moving from just diagnostics to even preventative, which is really value added before you get to predictive. So in compressors, in the dental office, what matters not only is the pressure and the volume of air, but actually it's humidity. Air has got to be super dry for the proper use of the instrumentation. May not be relevant in other compressors, but for dental office, it really matters. So if you can imagine now being able to monitor humidity, you can turn knowledge about the humidity of the air that it's producing into something preventative. You can understand if your desiccant dryer system is working at top efficiency before you have an event, and then do a change out of the filtration systems and the desiccant before you have an event. That's before you even have predictive about what's going to happen. By monitoring new data, you can create a prevention. And so I think the future of solving problems today is relevant, but it allows you to think about the problems that you're solving for customers in a unique way, and you can move along the spectrum maybe faster than you want to believe without huge analytics, by being creative about knowing how your device operates and what problems you can solve if you can detect that data, use algorithms to synthesize the data in a way that works, and then obviously report on it through IoT technology.
Yeah, just start that. Even runtime. Runtime is, now you have real runtime. Not, the office is open for 8 hours today. Really, maybe it was 10, maybe it was 12, maybe somebody left the compressor on all night, This is, just having runtime data is critical for some of our customers. And again, there's nothing predictive or diagnostic there. It's just having the data, and data makes a difference,
Right. That is actually something that has struck me working with the three of you over the last couple of years, that very often you start getting access to data that some might assume you already have access to, but you really don't, right? You make these expensive pieces of machinery that get shipped to somewhere, and actually as they leave the door, you often lose complete track of it. And so what is maybe interesting to me in that picture as well is that there's a whole, to use maybe overblown phrase here, but a whole value ecosystem around all of you, right? With multiple layers of customers, whether it's, in your case, when homeowners and construction companies and the utilities themselves. How are you thinking about that data sets that you're now gathering, how that could be of value to those different layers in the ecosystem around you? Can you speak to that a little bit? Because in energy, that's a complicated ecosystem.
Yeah, and the data set is the thing, and prediction is what we do today. I mean, if you look at an energy device like a water heater that consumes about a third of the electricity in the home, and our value proposition to the utility is we're going to predict for you exactly how that water heater is going to perform every 15 minutes, a year ahead, 2 years ahead. But I mean, in our contract in Hawaii, we've had to give a contract capability. We're going to deliver 2.5 megawatts of capacity. And then 4 days in advance, and then 24 hours in advance, we had to give them the exact forecast. So we're doing predictions every single moment, 15-minute latency. So a day out, we say we're going to deliver 365 kilowatts. And our water heaters actually have to do that. And every variance, whether it's up or down, we're going to get penalized for it. So prediction is what we do. It's the heart of our business. And accurately delivering on those forecasts is what the utility relies upon. So yeah, that's the heart of our business.
Interesting. And maybe digressing for a second, but I know it's a theme that you personally care about a lot as well. You mentioned social impact at the very start.
Right.
As part of your intro. I know in your business as a result, with harder to reach communities, for example, harder to connect communities, there's a social impact as well. So I wanted to give you a couple of minutes to speak to that as well.
Yeah, and imagine our social impact is try to engage these communities. But what would happen, what would kill our mission, is if we gave them a cold shower. So we're promising this capacity to the utility, but the priority in our algorithms is to not deliver a cold shower. And so we have to do that, and we have to deliver the capacity. So what the utility does is that we allow the utility to engage these renters. The utility gives those renters a bill credit, $5 to $10 a month, which is valuable to a lot of people. And then in the operations of it, we just have to make sure that we can accurately deliver on the forecast, and we don't deliver cold showers. So for instance, one building that we deployed to, everything works great out of the 20 units that are there, except the one penthouse. The guy and has a bunch of teenage daughters. They use hot showers all the time, hour, 2 hours. And so he had to get off the program because there was no way we could avoid a cold shower for them. So that level of granularity is what we're doing, and we're engaging each one of these residents in order to deliver this capacity to the utility. Yeah.
Got it. Mario, Nguyen mentioned that electrical heaters consume about a third of energy at home. I can imagine there's a close competitor when it comes to energy
HVAC is number one.
Consumption at home.
HVAC and heating is the number one consumption of energy. So.
To what extent do you think that IoT could help with that in the future? Because you've spoken about device diagnostics and the health of the device, but in terms of consuming energy more efficiently, I know you're thinking in that direction as well.
Yeah, and I think it's all going to be about the data, right? So collecting that data allows us to make those bets in the future. I mean, I think efficiency. I think even back to the data. Hopefully, our goal is to have huge deployments, so we can get data back to the manufacturer, get data about the stuff. It's retro. Our stuff is basically installable on any machine, right? So it's retro install. So getting data on old machines and new machines, and as all these refrigerants are coming out and a whole bunch of changes are coming down, and again, we're in a business also regulated by the government on the refrigerant side. Getting more of that data will allow us to do things that are more efficient. Maybe there's a new solution again.
Okay.
I think really there's no limit to the possibilities we can do on efficiency around systems. Even just making them run better, that's if we save, if we're talking about pennies at an hour add up, right? And then you have hours, you have dollars on the days, and those add up. So the goal there is to start small and really look at the future of that.
Okay. Thinking through what the impact of IoT for the three of you could be, and switching gears maybe a little bit beyond some of the benefits we've talked about that can be quantified. I know all three of you from very different angles care about the experience that your customer has, right? And we've had conversations across your three businesses about how could connecting your portfolio and products also help with customer experience. So maybe I'll come to you first, maybe unfairly, Heather, because I know you're still thinking through some of this, right? Because you have all these multiple relationships within your industry, directly with some larger corporate customers, with some large distributors. How do you think that IoT might help with generating a better customer experience for some of those parties?
Wow, you did
There's
put
an
me
easy
on the
one
spot.
for you. Yes, sorry about that.
Without getting too much into our strategy, I think it's fair to say that dental offices are becoming more and more sophisticated because of a lot of intrinsic factors, but it's really all because of the debt that dental students come out of school with. They have to become better business operators beyond just being outstanding clinical dentists. And so what's happening in the marketplace is, and this will get around to the customer experience, that what's happening in the marketplace is the consolidation of the mom and pop or the single dentist into group dentistry. So one of the things IoT can really revolutionize or improve for a customer experience is as dental offices consolidate into what are known as groups and larger group practices, they have to manage, we heard about it earlier this morning, fleet management. They have to manage a fleet of devices, dental offices, and with this data that's provided across a fleet, not only can they better streamline their operational costs across the fleet of systems, but think about knowing that a particular device is offline. If you're in a group, you can actually reroute patients, you can call patients ahead, you can reschedule. And so not only our customer has a better experience in terms of the group being able to streamline their operations and get efficiency, but the end user customer and ultimately the patient may have a better experience because that avoided treatment that was scheduled could not be a disruption in their day if we know ahead of time, and they can reroute and schedule calls. So really, we're moving from a censored compressor into a new operational model for dentistry that really affects the patient, and that's how we see IoT really changing the ecosystem, and it really does provide the better customer experience over time.
So Will's doing okay with his direction with fleet management.
Yes,
It's largely
actually,
thumbs up.
yeah.
Yeah, he's doing all right. I know, Mario, you've spent a lot of time thinking about adoption and customer experience as well, right? I think you gave us a challenge at some point that whatever retrofit installation would happen has to happen in under 15 minutes. Yeah. I think we got there, right? Yeah. But if you can talk us a little bit through the principles that you think about and what you had to bear in mind.
Yeah, I mean, again, our businesses are so similar. It's pretty incredible. I think for us was also changing the paradigm of what work should be prioritized inside the office. So if you're setting a service plan or you have these customers that are important to you, having these dashboards of what should I do today, right, on critical and these run times and things, that changes the sort of flow at a customer. And it's not going to change overnight, but basically now he has a way to do that. And then, unfortunately, we have a second customer. His customer is also our customer because we have apps. We acquired a company called Alert Labs, and they have other IoT products. So we made this single pane of glass now that has all these IoT products that we want to show the customer. But the HVAC guys don't want to show them all this data and all this math we talked about. They just want to say, what's my runtime, what's my efficiency, that kind of stuff. So it's making it easier for both of those consumers, right, and allowing our contractors, which is our customers, to sort of plan better businesses, have a better workflow, and basically build business models that are scalable, right? It's building a SaaS business around maintenance and preventive maintenance, and again, just like a dentist office, people want to be cold or people want to be warm, depending where you live, and so the goal is to get there in the next 5 years, right? Is to sort of deploy that at scale and continue to deploy that so that happens.
And I've been struck by your attention to detail. I mean, just maybe to share with the audience, I've seen Mario and his team make sure that whatever we digitize in the digital world on a tablet or a phone, the gauges that the technicians will see look almost identical to the actual physical gauge that they would otherwise use.
So
right?
when you open the app of your technician, it's like having digital gauges, right? It's everything you would see there. And then, so today there's a small delay. There's about a 2-second delay because of cellular, but now with Bluetooth, if you have the device, now we can be real time. So there'll be 0 delay, right? So if you're trying to add more refrigerant or you're trying to do some diagnostics, there'll be 0 delay there. So that's the future goal set that we just talked about. That's a feature set that we were looking at, and I just got it for free.
Thank you for getting another thumbs up for Will's roadmap. That's good.
Yeah,
you get extra points for that, Mario.
Yeah, and those are things that I mean, I love Particle, and one of the things we do is we constantly push your hardware, right? So that's the good thing about it is I can push all these things I want and just throw it over the fence and not worry about it, and then suddenly it comes to fruition, right? And those are one of the things we really wanted, and it's here, and so that's something we're going to take care of in the future. So that gives us more capabilities, so that gives us more bandwidth, more data we can send when you're local than via cellular.
Right. You've opened the door for me, so I'm going to walk through it. You said you love particles, so audience, bear with me. I'll try to keep this mercilessly short, but I would like to do a quick roundtable. Heather is sighing. She knows what's coming. Yeah. Maybe starting with just maybe a quick synopsis of why did you decide to go with particle? Because we take sometimes a somewhat contrarian view towards IoT as well, right? We'd like to think we're not like most other vendors. We've taken a very particular approach we strongly believe in, and I hope this audience agrees with mostly, but I'd love to hear from each of you a bit of a quick mini testimonial as to why you decided to move forward with particle.
I mean, shifted energy wouldn't be here without particle. All of our competitors in GIWH were using Wi-Fi or Ethernet, and shifted energy with our social justice mission, we wanted mass scale. So without IoT, imagine trying to maintain 1,000 passwords for Wi-Fi, and you just can't do it. And so if we have IoT, we can go to a 500-unit building and deploy to that building in a couple of weeks. You can't do that with Wi-Fi or anything else. And with our team, our small team, which has the coding, machine learning expertise, but no hardware expertise, and the communications layer, we just rely upon Particle for that, and then all their certifications, as I mentioned before. It's like working together, it's been just an enabling partnership that has gotten us to where we are today.
And Heather, I know we're pretty young in our relationship, about a year now, but still, I'd like to ask you the same.
Sure. Actually, the truth of the matter is, the slide, whoever presented the slide this morning about Particle being kind of a full stack provider, I don't think of it in those terms because I am not super technical. I think of it as end-to-end, and the ultimate reason we chose Particle is recognizing their abilities across the hardware, the software, the connectivity, managing the mobile device world and the cellular exchange of, we're using cellular too for reliability purposes, the data exchange, all of the elements we felt that Particle could be the end-to-end solution for us so we could focus on what we do best. And in thinking about presenting here this morning, I talked to our engineering team. Now we are a bigger team. We have about 400 employees deployed across the United States. And we have not launched, as I mentioned, and I talked about, where we are in the process and what could we have done better. And one of our electrical engineers came up with this quote that I thought was appropriate to share. He views Particle and his partners in Particle as an extension of our own design team. And up to date, I think it's probably saved us about 9 months in our overall project schedule. And time is money, as we all know. So although the proof is in the pudding, and when we launch next year, we hope to have singular success in our marketplace, I think we would never be where we are today looking at a launch in 6 months had it not been for Particle's full stack or their understanding of the whole ecosystem and providing solutions really from end to end.
And we have a February 2020 hard deadline, which we will make, right,
Yes.
Heather? Mario.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been using Particle for a little bit over 3 years, I think now, with you guys. And really, as we've grown, you've grown. So a lot of things have grown up together on that piece. And then when we are at Alert Labs, they have phenomenal manufacturing, phenomenal engineers. And so we try to break stuff. Our goal is how can we extend that hardware to do something that might not have been to spec, and then if it works, then we go back to you guys, and you guys help us get there. And on the new stuff today, on the new connectors today, that's a huge for us because we ship things U.S. and Canada today, but Alert Labs wants to go. We have stuff in Mexico, we have stuff now in Australia, we have stuff in Africa. So being able to create one device where you can change the chipset on it that's game changing, right? That's going to be a game changer for us. And I think that those are the things that again, the reason I'm up here today is because we have a partnership with Particle. Particle is our partner, and like any partnership, there's a lot of give and take, and we've been successful with our projects and with our sort of innovation because you guys have been helping us through that process.
I appreciate that from the three of you. And as you can hopefully sense in the audience, this has felt like a great and ever deepening partnership. And we've learned a lot from your respective companies as well. And speaking about learning, I'm assuming a lot of you are here today to interact and to learn a little. So maybe in starting to think about wrapping up this panel discussion in the next 2 minutes, maybe I want to ask the three of you about some of your learnings as well, whether it's surprises or with the benefit of hindsight, anything you would do differently, or when you think about adopting IoT, something you wish you had known at the time. And I don't know where all of you in the audience are in your cycle of developing an IoT product or working with people who do. So whatever learnings the three of you can share, I'm sure will be very useful. Maybe starting with you, Nguyen, if you think back about the last year or two, is there anything that you think back of where you go, I would do that differently today, or any advice that you would give the audience?
Honestly, as a startup, you just plan for failure, and the best laid plans are thrown out the window as soon as the first bullets go. And so it's just how you deal with the difficulties. And we've dealt with a lot of difficulties, but we've had the resources of Particle and the flexibility on our side to make it work. Whenever you're developing a new product, rolling things out, you're going to face a lot of challenges, and it's how you deal with those. And by being able to rely upon the Particle team, when those things come up, like we had no idea to meet that RFI in Canada that we needed all these certifications. Luckily, Particle gave us about 3/4 of what we needed. So I'm glad, because in talking to other players, they tried to develop their own in-house solution. And I would say they spent maybe 80% of their resources, time, and effort on developing the communications layer. If we had done that, we would not be as where we are today. So yeah, choose a good partner and then get prepared for the shit to hit the fan.
Heather, what would you say to your 2018 self?
Yeah. So I think I haven't encountered any of the technical challenges yet. We're solving as we go through the development process. But probably the lesson learned for myself and our team is really thinking through very early the commercialization strategy. Like both energy and HVAC, we have a complicated go-to-market system. We sell direct, we have distributors, we have third-party servicers, we have committed service providers. There's a whole ecosystem around it. And all of those stakeholders, as well as end users, have a stake, if you will, in the data and how the service event is performed. And I think we have been slow to crystallize how to implement our IoT solution to derive the best value. And I would say any of you who are not fully embarked on the path and considering it, really think very carefully about your go-to-market or your commercialization strategy, because it will potentially give you nuances on the way you develop the technology and certainly your future path.
And Mario, apart from not wanting to spend another 9 months on designing one connector, what else would you?
I think, I mean, it's not really particle related, but I think supply chain is such a big deal. I mean, particle for us is the thing that communicates and gives us the data, but we designed a whole bunch of sensors and pressure sensors, and like that, I wish I would have known 3 years ago how hard that really was to get a quality sort of piece out of the supply chain. We've applied for 3 patents in 3 years around these products that we had to create ourselves. We tried to do off-the-shelf stuff like we did with particle, and it didn't work. So that's where we said, hey, I wish 3 years ago would have started down that path sooner, because we're there today, but it took us 2 years to get that one of our sensors right. It took about 3 years, and unfortunately, I probably would have spent more time doing homework on that piece. So it really the supply chain is very important. So particle is just a piece of it. The sensors you add and the sensors you pick, and being able to get those sensors in bulk, and there's all that supply chain stuff that I wish I would have had known more information. Right, that's one of the things where the guys at Art Labs had huge experience, because there were a lot of ex-BlackBerry guys that really understood that piece, and so that's one of the reasons we partnered with them and then ended up acquiring them, because in reality it's so difficult to really, and again, I'm sort of particle deals with this every day, creating their own product, right? This is not a Mario problem or a Watsco problem. This is an everybody problem. And so supply chain is so finicky, and getting good quality products and getting good quality things that aren't delayed is probably something I didn't expect to happen. I thought that that's all commodity. I can get off the shelf. You can buy from whoever and get it. It really isn't. And a resistor and a pressure sensor or temperature sensor, they're not the same between brands. They're not the same. Even when the packaging says something, it says plus or minus 5. We talked about this yesterday. It really is a plus or minus 5 sometimes, and that changes everything. Changes your algorithm. It changes everything. So that became a huge battle for us. And really, it's one of the things that the guys at Alert Labs started to solve. Really, they're experts at that, and that's something that when I started this thing, I didn't think that was going to be a problem, because everybody does this, right? That's something you buy off the shelf, and so.
Yes, I wish that Margaret, our director of operations, were here. She has a team of more than a dozen people in China just to focus on things like this, component selection and what have you. I think she'd be in strong agreement with you. All that remains, I think, is just for me to thank the 3 of you for jumping on planes and for driving 4.5 hours and peeling you away from your day jobs. For those of you in the audience who might not know, in terms of how we go to market, we're not a company that is looking to sign up tens of thousands of customers. We see ourselves having a few hundred customers over the years that we create, deep and lasting relationships with, and we feel a huge sense of responsibility. If your customers make stuff that has to last between 5 and 20 years, then we need to take our technology development seriously. And so I hope you've enjoyed this panel discussion as much as I have. So with that, Nguyen Lee, Heather Trombley, Mario Cruz, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.